So let's get started here. Okay, so obviously this is week 3. We are halfway through class, which I don't know about you, but it feels like it's been amazingly fast. This week we're going to look at chaining and data sets. I think we're going to touch very briefly on chaining and mostly talk about data sets because I think it's the thing that everyone is really interested in talking more about. So we will do 2 examples of chaining and then we'll look at some data sets. So today we're going to do another little breakout session because I feel like that was really helpful for everyone just to sort of get their juices flowing and starting to talk about ideas. So Leah is going to do her magic of zooming us all around to whatever rooms we need to be in. And then once we're done with that, we'll sort of come back and talk a little bit more. And then we will do a quick demo on chaining, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll spend the second half of class really looking at data sets because next week we're going to go over how to do training instead of Runway. So we'll do some StyleGAN training. So I know that some of you have already tried it and started playing with it. Next week we'll talk a little bit more about maybe the things I know will work and won't work or other things. So maybe you'll learn that you did some things differently than you should have, or you'll learn some new techniques to use it. So we'll look at that more next week. But basically what I'd like to have everyone set up for next week is have a data set they can start to play with. So Leah is going to help do a demo of how to scrape Instagram. I'll talk a little bit about where some public data sets are already available in case you want to grab stuff from there. And then we'll just do a quick Q&A at the end of class. So Leah, take it away.
One thing about Zoom is only the host can put people in breakout rooms.
Cool, so let me change that for you then.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you want to talk a little bit about what the,
So yeah, you guys, I think have been experimenting and playing with things in Runway. So this is just time to connect with each other and talk about what project ideas you're thinking of, what ideas worked, what you want to develop further. Kind of just what you're interested in making and giving each other tips and inspiration. So we'll put you in small groups of 3 to 4. You'll be able to talk for 10 minutes. Derek and I might pop in and out. And then after 10 minutes, we'll come back to the main session, and then people can share if they want particular things that they learned.
Cool, yeah, so I'd love for you guys to also talk about, I think Leah has listed here, but what data are you mostly interested in trying to pull? Because Leah and I are just 2 people, and I've already seen just from the group that there are lots of people with ideas on where to find different types of images and that sort of thing. So please definitely talk to each other.
I'm putting you into rooms now. Cool. I think everyone's back.
Awesome. So I heard from one group that they're really interested in doing stuff around video. I'm interested to hear from other folks if there were themes around either data sets you're interested in working on, models you're interested in playing in. What have people been talking about so far, if anyone wants to share?
I can show one idea that I tried to make happen, but found the data set. Should I share my screen?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So, wait, sorry. Okay, so I basically tried to. There's this New York Times map that's based on a data set from Microsoft of literally every single building in America. And I wanted to scrape the tile set from this because you get a kind of great variety of patterns in the way that these different American cities are laid out, a variety of building sizes, densities, etc. And so I didn't know how to do it, so I just kind of manually went through the source and everything and downloaded a few of them. I think I had 200 or so only. And still got a little bit of something, but I would love to be able to download a very significant amount of different densities of these cities and play with that. Because they're also each tile I think is 512 by 512. So if I could scrape them all, that would be phenomenal. Or maybe not all, but a decent amount of maybe 10, 15, 20 cities that are of varying densities and patterns. So
yeah, those are cool.
One thing I tried.
Awesome. I'll ask around and see if I know anyone that knows how to pull stuff from those tiles. I used to work at the New York
Yeah,
Times, so I also might know people who actually worked on that project, and I can
I
sort
was
of be
gonna
like,
ask you
hey,
if you did.
can you hook me up? So I'll see.
So what I did find
I,
was the JSON files, like the geo, I think they're geo JSON,
Mhm.
which are, I guess they're just like vector files, but I don't know how to make that into an actual data set. But yeah, that would be one project that I would love to do.
an
Cool.
easy solution there is probably Mapbox because of the fact that it allows you to choose your own styles and what you want to render, such as buildings or roads, and it has everything basically. And then you just walk it with a normal sort of XYZ tile set. Hit me up later. I've done this sort of stuff
Okay,
for my work with satellite
awesome.
imagery.
Okay, sweet, thank you.
Awesome. This is why it's awesome to have like a class of people, right? We can all help each
Yeah.
other. So awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anyone else have anything they want to show or just talk about, or like something they're thinking about?
I had a question about, well, posted on Slack maybe a week ago, but how difficult it is to get a live data set. Like last week's example was in classic or during Q&A that came up was using livestock. And like say if you were to take today's weather's like whether it's temperature or like the wind or any kind of like daily number and if you were to stick that into Runway, like Derek, I think you said that you have to put it into P5.js or you have to get the live data set using P5.js, but like how complicated is that workflow?
So we'll look at that in the last week of class. Like I'll do like a P5.js demo, and maybe it like makes sense for me to just find like, I'll see if anyone, I'm not a live data person, but let me just see if I have someone who like I know that could point me in the direction of like a JavaScript file to like grab some of that data, and then we can look at how to play with it. The thing about Runway, or like the thing especially about using certain models, is that real time is really tough. So it's actually really hard to like getting live stream data in is easy-ish. Converting that to a live stream video, whether it's a StyleGAN model or a big GAN model or whatever, the rendering time is just like not real time. It's like usually a second per image, so it just is a little bit slower. But there's still some cool stuff we could do with it, or like you could even like record a certain snapshot of time and then like basically make a recording out of that. So we could definitely look at some stuff like that. I'll actually make a note to start looking into some of those things this week, so that for the last week of class, like we have some stuff to look at.
What if you can like use information from the past? Like it's not necessarily live, but it's still the same data set and it's still saying like, like 1992, like March 15th or something,
Yeah,
like,
totally. Yeah. So if we can get it in like a format, like a CSV or a JSON file, like we can definitely look at some stuff like that. So I'll just dig around and try to see what we can find. And then I'll probably do like for the last week of class, I'll do a really quick demo of how to connect, like just how to do P5.js into Runway. And then we might look at like a basic example just during a latent video. And then we can also try a version that connects some data and see how it goes.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Go for it. Sorry.
Yeah, I just on the data stuff, I was spending a lot of time trying to get data out of Runway, which is kind of the other side of things. So I've been doing like a lot of motion tests where I ripped some stuff off of YouTube, and I did another one where I had this dancer going, and I got I discovered that they normalize. So it's between 1 and 0. So the X and Y data has to be, so you have to kind of stay consistent. And then even the time frame. So if you do 30 frames per second, it does like 0.333, like it separates 30. So everything is normalized. And then there's no X, Y, and Z, but I was able to get the JSON out. And then like, they also have a server thing on Runway that you can like send to a local host. So if you can point your software to that, that wasn't real time either. You have to keep updating, but it sounds like they're working on like, shoving that data out. And the only problem is just Z data, like Z depth. There's no models at all for Z depth. So that's going to be an interesting challenge. But I thought that was really interesting. I basically just saved a whole bunch of JSON data out with the different models. So if anybody is interested in like how PIFPath solves better than PoseNet or whatever, just hit me up.
Yeah, and I'll say, at some point you may find that Runway is limiting in terms of what you can get away with. Like I personally use Runway a lot just to explore new models. But once I know how a model works, like I have enough of a coding background or enough machine learning background to like just go and like use that model on my own server, and then be able to like basically manipulate the data in a much cleaner way and sometimes faster. So that is always an option. Obviously, you need a certain level of knowledge of machine learning and those sort of things, but just being able to play with it in Runway, it like helps like reduce the time it takes you to play with stuff. So, so actually one thing we'll talk about at the last week of class as well is like, I have other classes that I teach in various different like machine learning models. So if you are interested in something, let me know. And there may be a group of people who would be interested in a full class around that. Pose stuff isn't really my thing, but like I do know people who are interested in that. And I know people who work in that. So we could always like find some people to sort of band together and learn from someone who does know a lot about it. So if you're interested in that, just let me know. Jason, I think you were going to ask something, right?
Yeah, so I started thinking about my project this week, and I want to do something with typography. Like I have a set of like photos that I've taken over the last 10 years of like found like street typography from like signs or, just anything that you see like while walking down New York City. But as I was like, starting to go through to collect them all, I realized that there's like so much variation in there. And like, I don't know if that would just like all turn to mush. So I'm just like curious, like, how like what's the sweet spot of like how much variation will create interesting artifacts versus like too much just being like giving me nothing.
Yeah, my sad answer to that is just like we don't know until we try it.
Yeah.
I'll say one of the nice things about Runway is that it is super fast to train a model. And we'll talk about this more next week, but I think what they do is they basically like spin up a like 8x GPU server. So what actually takes me weeks to train or like a week to train takes you a couple hours on Runway. So the nice thing about Runway is like you can really quickly try stuff, and if it doesn't work, you can find out why. One of the things I think the typography, because I know Roy, you said you're interested in typography too. One of the things I think is is going to hinder you for the using Runway right now to train a StyleGAN model is that they turn on mirroring by default, and you can't turn it off yet. So all of your type will be mirrored, which means your text will always look kind of mushy. So that's one thing to know. Let's just try stuff in Runway, and if it works well, then like I have a bunch of GPUs that I can use, and if we find a really cool project, I'm happy to like maybe spin something up for someone and try to figure out how to make that work. So yeah, just be aware typography is gonna be a little gnarly in Runway to start with. And I've heard from Chris, one of the founders, like they're gonna turn on some stuff to manage that a little bit better, but it's not yet out yet. So just know typography will look kind of messy, but even with mirroring turned off, typography always looks kind of messy because of just the way machine learning models work. So yeah, it'll be fun to see, and we'll get some interesting stuff out of it.
Yeah, I'm cool with it being weird, messy, but like,
Yeah.
Intentional messy, not
For sure.
unintentional messy.
Cool, awesome. All right, Moises, go ahead. And then I'll jump into the chaining demos.
So you had mentioned BigGAN and P5.js. The workflow would be that you do that connection and then you ask for the interpolations, but how does that work? You were saying that it's kind of slow, but you can record it. Like if you want it to be smooth, and even if it takes time, you can do that?
Yep, you can. Yeah, P5.js is the way to do that. So basically, like we'll talk about this in the last week of class, but certain models, so we talked about latent spaces last week with vectors. Basically what you do in P5.js is manipulate that vector. So it's a 512 dimensional array. You manipulate those numbers very, very slowly in P5.js, and then you ask Runway to return what the image is from that. So as you manipulate those over time, you just keep asking Runway to keep generating that image, and you get a much smoother interpolation than you can get out of Runway directly right now. So we'll definitely walk through. I'll walk through how we do that in week 5, but we will cover that. That works for StyleGAN and it works for BigGAN. There might be other models it works for, but at least I know those two it'll work for.
I found it a very thorough step-by-step guide on that.
Yeah.
So I can tag you if you want, Moises.
Yeah,
Just to
why don't
take
you
a look
share
before.
if you can
I
share that
already
in.
did,
Okay,
but
perfect.
before the
Awesome.
class,
Okay, awesome.
I'll tag whoever raised his hand now. He's her, they. Okay. Too many people. Okay.
It's
Gotcha.
I think you just put it in the Runway channel, right?
Yeah.
So it
I did.
is.
Yeah. I'm tagging you all. Bye.
Okay, awesome. Yes, so it is totally in there. Cool. Yeah. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it. I'll show you the way that I do it, and then we can, if there's better ways, we'll figure that out too. Cool. So really quickly, let me start just showing some really quick chaining demos, and then we can jump into talking about data sets. So let me move this guy out of the way here. Come on.
Looks like Jesse had a question.
Oh, sure. Go for it, Jesse.
You had mentioned that StyleGAN was slow. I was just wondering, is that inherent to StyleGAN, or is that more of the fact that Runway is remote and all of the server stuff? Like if you had it optimized local, could you the StyleGAN faster?
It's a little bit of a mix of both. It's like partly because Runway is using cloud servers, but even if you had a local like GPU setup, it still wouldn't be that fast. Just like creating a convolution neural net from the input is just kind of slow no matter what. Like you can get probably like 1 or 2, 3 frames per second. That's probably pretty good. Trying to get anything faster than that is going to be really tough as of today, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Cool. So let's talk a little bit about chaining. So I assume that like sort of, I know at least a couple of you have done some chaining inside of Runway. I actually think this is my favorite part about Runway. Doing chaining on a set of servers without using Runway is a huge pain in the ass. Like it is actually very, very hard to do. So this is actually one of the things I think Runway has like sort of cornered as a way to do some things that are really, really interesting. Now, as Naoko mentioned, they kind of broke like one of my favorite features recently in doing this, and that you can't like export everything really seamlessly. But what is nice is you can sort of demo the experience, and then you can sort of step-by-step walk through it. So I'm going to do 2 chaining examples, and then we can just sort of like, I'll show you a little bit of a hack around the exporting issue that they just introduced. I have a feeling they're going to fix it because I've already seen a couple people complain in Runway about it, but we'll sort of see what happens. So really quickly, I'm going to jump out of here and jump into Runway. So 2 things to know. The first is that you can only chain models that are inside of the same workspace. So I'm just going to quickly delete these, and I'm going to add them back in. So one of the first demos that I like to do is I like to do one where we take StyleGAN and we use super resolution to make the images larger in resolution. So really quickly, I'm just going to grab one of the StyleGAN models here. I really like this Brutalist one. I actually found that it was trained for 7,500 steps, which is really, really good. So I'm actually going to add this to a new workspace. So let's come back over here. So I'm going to add this to a new workspace. I like to just, when I actually use workspaces, I like to name them. So I'm just going to call this one StyleGAN Super Res. All right, so now I have this model in here. I'm going to come back over here. And if you've never played with super resolution models, they are under the post-processing. And there's actually a couple different versions. There is SRFBN, there's fast SRGAN, there is image super resolution. So there's a couple ones to pick from here. I personally I use the SRFBN one. It's one of the newer ones, and it's a little bit better. Prior to like this week, actually, all of the exports coming out of Runway were JPEGs, and now they've changed it so that it's also PNGs. Being able to do PNGs is way better, especially with super resolution, because you don't get nearly as many artifacts. So we'll look at that in just a minute. So I'm gonna add this to my workspace. Cool, so now I have two models inside this workspace. In SRFBN, you can just plug in, for the input, you can just plug in the Brutalism generator. So now this is going to accept the input or the output from this StyleGAN model into the input as this model. And what's nice here is that to get this running, you just go up to the workspace section and you just click on the little ellipses menu and then hit start all models. And what's nice about this is it just like, instead of going to go through each model and click them all on, you just turn them all on at once and they're all going to get started loading up. So you'll see here, this is already loading. I'm going to click into the StyleGAN one, and while this is loading, I'm going to set this up to be a vector input. So it looks like this is now running. This one's also now running. You'll see this is now saying it's waiting for the data. So what's great here is now I've got this latent space manipulator here that I can just sort of like look around and grab different images. And you'll see that if I select this one, you'll see this output is 1024 by 1024. But when I switch to srfbn, now it's double. It's 2048 by 2048. And if I download this image, and I just quickly open it, you will see that the output is 2048 by 2048. Now, here's the thing about super resolution. I won't say it's perfect, but I will say it's better than Photoshop. So if you were to open this in Photoshop and just manipulate it, like make the image larger in Photoshop, it would not look as nice as what's here. This actually adds detail to images when you upload it, when you upres it, which is pretty cool. If I were to stop this model, I can also switch to 2x, 3x, and 4x. My personal feeling is that if you do multiple 2x's on the same data set, it tends to be better than jumping right to 4x, just because it's generating more sort of detail as it grows, and I just tend to find the results are a little better. That's my personal feeling. Everyone has their own feeling about it. What's nice about this is now I can just click around and I can keep generating these. So a simple way to do this is just to just click and then come back over here and then click save and then click. You could save out each one of these individually. You used to be able to run this as an export. They have sort of changed this a little bit now so that it doesn't really work the way you expect it to. You kind of have to create a folder and then upload that itself. So what I did previously is I went in here, and for whatever reason, you can do exports from the first model into a folder. So I basically generated an image directory and then saved a bunch of these out into a folder. And then what you can do from this model is that you can then click export, choose your input, and you can upload a directory. So I'll just upload a folder. So I uploaded this folder of images. There's just like 17 in here. And then you can come in and set some parameters. So I could set this to 4x if I wanted to. I could set the output format to JPEG or EXR. I personally think leaving it PNG is the best. And then you can decide if it should go to a directory or a video. And then when you press export, it's going to do what's called a batch export. Those batch exports show up over here in the left-hand column in exports. And you can just download this file once it's ready to go. What's nice about this batch export is you don't have to have Runway running to be able to use it. So it's kind of nice that you could like shut your laptop. If you have like thousands of images that you wanted to run as a batch, you could actually just create a folder, batch them through this process, and it will still charge you for the time it runs. But as soon as it's done that batch process, it turns off the machine for you. So you won't be like charged like triple amount for forgetting to leave your machine on or turning your machine off or whatever. So it's kind of a nice feature, but it does in some way kind of break the like fluid feel of like using this tool. So just be aware of that. A really nice other feature about this is that you can come over here and you can click on these ellipses and you click stop all models, and it's going to turn off all your models at the same time. So like I think chaining is a really cool feature inside of Runway. And I think it's going to be something that like as more and more models get added is going to become like a unique capability of Runway. So these are now both off. So I'm going to show you one other, sorry, go ahead. Someone had a question.
Are you being charged for both models, or are you being charged for one model, or how does that work?
Yeah, so while both of these are running, you are being charged for both models. So you're then being charged essentially 10 cents a minute instead of 5 cents a minute because they're both running on different servers. So it's basically like from their perspective, you're running two models. When you run that batch export, it's only running it on one server. So it's still running sort of like 5 cents per minute for however long it takes to run that batch process. And what's nice about it is it does give you like a calculation on how much it thinks it's going to cost. So if you have 2,000 images you want to run through this batch process, you should check to see how long that's going to take before you do that, just in case it ends up being like $200 or something, you know? Yeah. So I'm going to show one other fun model that I think is really, really fun to play with. So I was sort of inspired by that project that I think I showed last week, which is Janelle Shane, sort of being able to do stuff in and out. So let me pull this. I'm just going to start these models because it might take a minute for them to start. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take AttentionGAN, which I showed in the very first week of class, where you basically give it text, and it can then figure out like what the image should look like. I'm then going to take that image, and I'm going to plug it into BigByGAN, which allows me to figure out what an image, like basically match an image to BigGAN's model. And then I'm going to take that image that is produced from BigGAN, and I'm going to create a caption for it. So let's start with up here. So let's start with, let's find an image. Let me think of an image. Let me just say a big orange cat. So that's my big orange cat. That is now trying to find the closest representation of this inside of BigGAN. And now, all right, this one's still spinning up. So this kind of ruins my big surprise here. All right, let's see when this one's ready to go. Come on, buddy. All right, well, while this, oh, it looks like it's running now. So let me try another one. So let's say a big fluffy dog. So there's my big fluffy dog. It looks neither fluffy nor dog-like. But when I put it into BigGAN, now I get a thing that looks almost raccoon-like. Let's see what the caption model determines it as. A brown and white dog standing on top of a green field. So that's really cool. That's kind of funny. Why don't I try to take this as my input now again? So why don't I take this as a brown and white dog standing on top of a green field, and I'm going to put that inside of AttentionGAN. There's my brown and white dog, and there's my brown and white dog inside of BigGAN, and let's see what happens here. So a dog and a dog playing with a Frisbee. So this is kind of a fun way like that you can chain these models together. Like I could keep going with this over and over and over again. And like maybe also want to like download these images and start to make like almost a screen, like what is it, stop motion animation of like each of these things happening, right? So to do this like by hand using servers would be the most annoying process I can imagine. So literally like Runway makes something like this sort of feedback loop really, really easy. And these are the sort of powers that I think we're going to see more and more coming out of Runway. But it's just really amazing that you can sort of start to do this stuff. So like, why don't I take this one more time? Because I'm really enjoying this. Paste this in. Here's what this model thinks a dog and a dog playing with a Frisbee looks like. Wow, that's actually fairly dog-like there. And then this one is a black dog running with a Frisbee in its mouth. So the Frisbee stayed all the way through that connection. That's pretty amazing, considering how terrible this first image was. Like, I don't see a Frisbee in this model at all, but through this connection, it actually did find it. So this is sort of where I think like as more models come in through Runway, there is more and more opportunity to do some really, really interesting stuff with chaining. And again, like I would never want to try to do this by hand. Yeah, Moises, go for it.
How would you export this stop motion magic you're doing? Like how?
Yeah, so this is where it gets kind of annoying. This is where it gets annoying. I would probably like literally go through one by one and like paste this. I also don't know why this message keeps disappearing. I would like save this image, and I might name it something like just give it a name of something like, you know, AttentionGAN 1. So it would be a AttentionGAN 1, save, and then go to BigGAN, and then I would download this one, and I would say BigGAN 1, and then I would go to image text, and I would save this one out. Like it is kind of like it's kind of annoying to do this in this process. Potentially, you could start to export them. So again, like now that I know this works, I could batch export a bunch of AttentionGAN phrases, batch export those images, then take that batch and bring it into, from the input, like do an export of the inputs, right? And then I could do it again. So like that might be a way to do it. The problem is you can't really get that fun feedback loop in that experience, but you could then actually maybe have just a bunch of different options and then you could play with it afterward. So it's kind of nice. You could build a bunch of materials and then start to build up a story around it.
If you're able to do scripting, is this something where you could curl the Runway service locally and then see the end result of all the change?
Yeah, that's a good point too. You could probably do something like that. So each of these runs on a network, on a local host, port. So you could potentially grab every time the port gets a new image or a new piece sent to it, you could start to combine those using curl or something else, like just some sort of getting script to grab those. So you could do some work like that. That'd be pretty interesting too. I'm gonna turn this off before I start to lose more money. But anyway, this is just like the tip of the iceberg of what I think you can do within Runway chaining, and I think it's a lot of fun to sort of start to play with this. So if anyone's interested in doing more of this, I'd love to talk about ways you could do this. Moises, go ahead.
I had one question about the scaling. If you scale frames from a video, I'm assuming you get noise still because it doesn't know the difference.
So that's one thing to talk about with super resolution. Super resolution is trained on photographs, trained on a huge data set of photographs. So the idea is that it sort of should know what detail looks like when scaled up from photographs. So with video or other things, it should hopefully scale up in a way that is like pretty good. But I've also seen people, there's a guy on Twitter by the name of Jonathan Fly who loves using models like this, and he starts with like 16 by 16 emojis, and he keeps scaling them up over and over and over again, and they become these super weird faces of humans. Like, again, because these models are trained on photographs, it wants to turn even the smallest emoji into a photograph. So it starts to interpret like photographic humans or photographic dogs or other things in these like small little gradients. So it's pretty interesting. You can exploit some of the problems in the way that these data sets are trained and do some really interesting things. But I think with video, it should work. I just generally find that with different images, it works well, and other images doesn't work well, and it's sort of like just kind of a crapshoot. And that's why there are literally like hundreds of super resolution models in the world, and there's only 3 or 4 here in Runway, but like there are many available on GitHub that you could play with and see if some of them work better than others.
So the thing that you were suggesting, which is that it's better to do 2x than 2x. So you would recommend that doing like a few super resolutions and then chaining them together?
Yeah, it sort of depends on what you want to do. Yeah, so like I have a video actually on how I use this in some of my own work, which is being able to produce high-res prints from these pieces, because most of these models only ever produce 1024 by 1024. That's like 3 inches by 3 inches in a print at 300 dpi. So I usually will run these through a 2x model a number of times to get them to like 10 by 10 prints, or even larger. And you get a lot of artifacts and like interesting sort of machine learning convolutional artifacts and those things. But for me, that's a part of my work. But generally, I do find 2x to 2x works better than jumping straight to 4x. But again, that's sort of up to the artist's eye to sort of see what they think looks good or doesn't. So. Cool. So unless there are more questions around chaining, let's take a 5-minute break and let's come back at 29. And then Leah and I are going to talk a lot about data sets. All right, cool. See everybody in 5 minutes. And y'all can see my screen, right? I have been showing this on screen. Okay, awesome. Cool. Okay, so data sets. So again, so what we're going to talk about next week is actually training your own StyleGAN model. And training is pretty different from what we've been doing in Runway so far, just like sort of playing around with pre-existing models and pre-existing trained models, and just sort of like using the pre-trained models to play with things. So in the case of something like, in the case of something like the attention GAN, someone has already trained that model to learn how to take text and convert it to images. So what we're going to do next week is actually create our own StyleGAN model that we'll be able to play with and do all sort of latent space vectors and that sort of thing. But in order to do that, you need a data set. And there's a couple different ways you can think about this, about making your own data set. There are pre-made data sets on the internet you could download and play with. In many cases, they will maybe not be set up in the format that you're going to need for StyleGAN, but you can still download them and then maybe like use some other tools to create them, to put them in a format you need. One thing we're going to look at today is how to do some web scraping. So Leah's going to demo how to web scrape Instagram. So basically you can grab either a bunch of hashtags from Instagram, or you can grab an actual user's images from Instagram, which is kind of frightening, but it's very easy to do with the tool we're going to use. So we'll look at how to do some scraping. If you're interested in scraping some other things, I know Stacy, who is not on today, but is probably going to be around on Slack later, has some experience in doing web scraping with particular websites. So if you are interested in that, talk to her, me, or Leah, and we can try to get some stuff working for you. And then the last thing is you can make your own data set. If you have a bunch of photographs of yours, or if you have video of yours, or if you have illustrations, like you can always sort of work with those things yourself. Pretty time intensive, but it also ends up in a really cool place. So I know, Jason, you had said you have your own photographs. I think that'd be a lot of fun to like look at this. I don't know if we have the requirements here for exactly what you need for a data set for StyleGAN. In general, I recommend at least 500 images. And those images should be, again, to this point of like what Jason was talking about, which is how diverse should they be? You usually need about 500 images, and they basically should have some diversity, but not too much diversity. So the way I describe this is if you were to like take your images and overlay them one over top of each other, they should line up in some places and then not line up in others. And that just, that's the way to get a good output where they still sort of represent those shapes. But in the case of Jason's work, where he's saying, you know, it's very diverse, different photographs of different signs, you'll get something a little bit muddier or a little bit noisier, but it will still be pretty interesting. So I think it's worth experimenting and just sort of seeing what you can do. If you can make 2 data sets, that's awesome. You should do that because you will learn a lot more about how data sets work. But I also realize how intense that is to do. So usually the best process for making your first data set is just to like do a Google search and see if there are sites that have collected a bunch of these images, right? So maybe I'm really interested in downloading, you know, vintage shoes or something. I might type in like vintage shoes and then data set and see if someone already has something produced. I might not find anything, but I could also always just type in vintage shoes and see what website has like, does anyone have thousands of images of shoes that I could download? Maybe I want to go to eBay and like just look and see what all of the eBay search results are for a certain brand of shoe. And then you would maybe want to look at something like using a Google Images downloader plugin, or actually using Beautiful Soup to like scrape those images. But first, just sort of see what's out there. It's really important to just find what's available to you, because a lot of times people are looking for the perfect thing and they never even think to search Google to see what's out there. So in terms of pre-made data sets, there are some data sets available to you. If you're really interested in like a couple things like faces, or if you're interested in animals, there are some good data sets out there you could already sort of scrape. So the first one is called ImageNet. ImageNet is like one of the more popular machine learning databases of images. It has something like millions of images of different categories and classes. That horses to zebras demo I showed you in the very first class, both the horses images and the zebras images came from ImageNet. So you can go into this site. It's a little slow because it has a lot of images and it's running on some university servers, but you can go in and actually look at different classes of animals or class of objects. And for each class, there's usually like maybe 100 to 1,000 images. So it's pretty helpful if you just want to find like a particular data set. I think most of the models that we've sort of explored, like my guess is that AttentionGAN or some other ones are also trained on ImageNet or on Sci-Far10. Sci-Far10 is a smaller data set of sort of a similar concept, which is like classes of images, whether it's animals or plants or objects. These might also be really small. I think these are like 256 by 256, which are a little small for StyleGAN, especially in Runway, but you can sort of see what's there and maybe we can figure out how to work with them. MNIST is sort of the most popular, like it's like the hello world of machine learning data sets. It is all handwritten digits. So if you're wondering how the bank is able to figure out what number you scrawled into on your check, that's thanks to MNIST. It's just a data set of a bunch of numbers. So if you're interested in that, that's available to you. It's kind of funny that it exists, but it's like the thing that everyone uses to start with machine learning. FFHQ, Celeb A, and LFW are all faces. They're all face data sets. So if you are interested in training a face data set or getting really weird with a face data set, you can download any of these. FFHQ is trained on Flickr data. I think there's 65,000 images or so. Celeb A, I don't know how big Celeb A is, but Celeb A has, it's mostly photographs of celebrities. And labeled faces in the wild, which is what LFW stands for, is also a data set of faces and mostly politicians and celebrities. I think someone once actually went in and tried to count how many, the LFW is pretty old, tried to count how many images of George Bush were in them. George Bush, the second president. And it's like something like, I think like 10% of the entire data set is a picture of George Bush. So if you're interested in George Bush data, there you go. That's one to download. All of these might require a login to be able to actually like access them, but I don't think any of them require like an EU login. I think you can just download them from wherever you want. I know at FFHQ, you can just grab that data. It's on Google Drive, but some of them might have logins or other restrictions around using them. But I think for this class, you're fine to use any of these.
Cipher 10 is actually 32 by 32. It's actually really small, but
don't use
still
that.
An interesting data set. But
yeah, use ImageNet then. ImageNet's gonna be much better. Cipher 10 is like way too small. Yeah, 32 by 32 is tiny. MNIST might actually also have that same problem. Usually what happens is a decade ago, someone made a data set and then like every 10 years they try to update it. So yeah, ImageNet is pretty good. FHQ is really good. Celeb A is good and LFW is so-so, but yeah. I also want to talk about this link. I'm actually going to open this because I think this is really interesting. Golan Levin, who is a professor at Carnegie Mellon, has started this sort of public repository of data sets of images. So this whole file here has links to different image data sets. Some of these link to Flickr, some of these link to digital libraries at different universities or just libraries in general. There's lots of weird things in here that I've really yet to see people play with. Yeah, there's all sorts of fun things in here. Now, some of these do require a login and some of them will be very restrictive about like, what you need to get access to and that sort of thing. Some of them also you can't do a bulk download, so you have to figure out a way to scrape them. But there are some really cool things here to play with. An archive of webcam feeds, a link page to face data sets, any number of things. So this is pretty cool. There's one here all called Leaf Snap, which is a data set all of different types of leaves. Just some cool stuff that I think is definitely worth playing with or definitely worth exploring to see if something here strikes your fancy. So yeah, so like I would definitely just explore those options before you decide to go and jump right into scraping your own. So I'm gonna let Leah take over at this point now that she just took a big sip of water and cover some scraping. You're still muted.
Thanks. So if you do not want to use a pre-made data set or you want to scrape the web for one, there are some Chrome extensions that will make it pretty easy. There's one for Pinterest called Pin Down that one of our students said was super easy to use. There's also one for Google Images that makes it easy to download images from Google. Although I know from personal experience that images from Google image search are kind of noisy and will require a lot of cleanup. And so that is why I'm going to be demoing how to scrape from Instagram because it tends to be a little cleaner. Flickr too is also a really good source of data, but scraping from Instagram and Flickr will require a little bit of command line. Oh, and there are videos, video tutorials to do both, scraping from Instagram and Flickr, both on Derek's channel, and they're linked here in the slides. Cool, I'm going to do a demo of Instagram Scraper. Derek, can you stop sharing your screen so I can share mine? Okay, cool. Share. Okay. Let me pull up the slides. So this is an Instagram page that I found that I know has about 2,000 posts, which I know is like a pretty good number to start with because I know for StyleGAN I need a minimum of 500 and ideally around 1,000. And yeah, all these images are images that I want to put into my StyleGAN model and see what happens. So there are, let me pull up the slides. There are a couple things you'll need to do before scraping. Just a little bit of setup. Derek has made a video to walk you through the process. Just some things to install to get your environment set up. But yeah, after you've got it all set up, the basic usage of it is pretty easy. You just type Instagram scraper followed by the username of the account you want to scrape. So here in this case, I would type Instagram scraper coral morphologic and press enter. And so here it is searching for their profile photo. Here it's searching for the number of posts that they have. Currently this number is at 1, but this will gradually increment up to the 2,000 that we have over here. Yeah, and so this might take about 5 to 10 minutes depending on your download speed. Yeah, I downloaded this earlier, and what this will look like in your home directory or wherever you have it saved is it'll just be like a large file full of images. And you can go in and just do a manual check and check that you are getting what you want. I'm going to quit out of this file because I'm going down my internet. So yeah. You'll want to take videos out of your data set. This is something that I would probably manually take out of my data set. So yeah, after scraping, you will definitely need to do some post-processing on your data set before it is ready to put into Runway and train on.
And I should add, there are ways to skip videos inside of Instagram Scraper. In that demo that I added, or the demo that's linked to from the slides, that shows you how to sort of do some of those steps to remove some of that, so you would skip it before actually downloading it all.
Good tip. There are some other options within Instagram Scraper if you want to scrape multiple accounts. Like if one account, I really like their images, but they only had 500, I could group him together with a lot of different accounts to scrape them all at once. There's also an option to scrape for a hashtag. So I might want to scrape all the pen plotter hashtag the images. One very important thing when you're scraping for a hashtag from Instagram is to always put a maximum number of images, because for some hashtags you might have hundreds of thousands of images and you don't want to download that many to your laptop because that will take forever. So always put a maxed out number. Cool. So at this point you have a bunch of images downloaded to your laptop or your machine, and the next thing you'll need to do is to clean up your data set. So the first thing you'll need to do is make sure you have Dataset tools installed. It's a repo that Derek has developed that basically makes a lot of things like processing images in bulk pretty easy. So you don't need to like open them all up in Photoshop and do them by hand, because that would take forever. So yeah, the things you'll need to do are take out images that are too small. You'll need images that are 1024 for StyleGAN. Second, you'll need to throw out duplicates. Sometimes there might be repeat images when you scrape from the internet. Third, you'll want to take a quick glance over all your data and just kind of throw out stuff that doesn't make sense and stuff you don't want in your data set. And then fourth, you'll need to crop all your images to square, because StyleGAN will want square images.
I have a question. So
yeah.
If your images are smaller than 1024 by 1024, that's what you meant, right? Like as in pixel size. So what happens if they're smaller than that? Like, is it just not enough detail, or it's like, is there a significant difference?
So we can also talk about this more next week, but Runway can actually do different sizes. So basically if all of your images are 512 by 512, there is a model that you can run that will do 512 by 512. In general, my recommendation is 1024 by 1024 if you can do it, because just the image quality is nicer in the end. what Runway will do if you feed it smaller images and still say I want to do 1024 by 1024 is we'll just res up those images. So get kind of blurry images that will be a part of your data set, and then it will basically reproduce blurry images back to you. So it's kind of important to know what size you want to work with before you start it, because you will get different results depending on what you do. And we'll talk about how to set the set the size you want to work with next week, because it's not clear. Runway doesn't make it particularly clear what size you're setting it to when you choose what size you're setting it to. So we'll talk about that more next week. But I would say try for 1024 if you can. If you can't, the next size down is 512.
Cool. Any other questions? Okay.
Oh, looks like Moises, you have a question, yeah?
Go ahead.
So for 512, are you suggesting to use another model to train?
Yeah, exactly. So so Runway has pre-trained models you can transfer learn off of. So they'll use FFHQ to do 1024 by 1024. I think the Celeb A model they have in theirs uses 512. I'll grab all the different file sizes that are available to you, but in general, to get really nice looking images, I recommend 1024. Yeah. Oh, I should also say that Runway does actually do square cropping for you in their model. So if you feed it a bunch of rectangular images, it will crop them all to square. I personally would prefer to crop my own images just to make sure that I know what I'm getting when I actually look at the data set. But if you do want to be, I don't want to call it lazy, but if you do just want to let Runway do it for you, it will do it for you. They've also added some new tools that allow you to crop images a little bit more, which I have a short video about if anyone's interested. But in general, I would still recommend, if you're comfortable using the command line, use the Datasets tool library, because it just will allow, it will give you more control.
Derek, would you, if I wanted to use a 512 and have a 1024 output, would you recommend that I run it through the resolution scaling one before or after I do the model training?
I'd recommend after, just because you'll get a cleaner output from the StyleGAN model if it's not already fuzzy or like slightly blurry data.
Okay.
Maybe other option, this might be kind of complicated, but if you have 512 squares that line up, you could tile them to a 1024. I don't know what that actually looks like from like a technical standpoint and how feasible that is, but it's an option.
Do you have any like tips on like mixing the data set or anything that you've done at this particular point? So like if I had a whole bunch of cats, say, that were 1,000 or 2,000, and I took 25% of them and I made them red, does that add like pink to the thing to it, or is that like just not, does that translation not really work? And also adding noise to it kind of like will screw with it a little bit, right? So can you like effectively add noise to it like you would do something else? I'm just sort of wondering, like, are there ways to control the sort of inputs in the data set phase?
So to your first question, which is if I make all the cats red, or like just crank up the red on those images, what will actually happen is 25% of your images coming out of the model will also be red. So think about this almost as like as a statistical model, where it's like what you feed it, we'll take it in as like a probability, right? So if you feed it half dogs and half cats, actually that's a slightly different problem, but essentially it will try to statistically understand the data set and how to match like sort of what you've given it. In cases where I wouldn't recommend adding cats and dogs, because it is also trying to figure out how those things should work together. So we'll try to do some mashing up of things. So a lot of what's nice about Runway is because it's fast, you can very quickly demo things and see what happens. But also that fast comes with that is somewhat expensive. Many models cost $25 to $50 to train. So make sure that you're not like just throwing at random shit, and that you are trying to like actually do something with it. Because you don't want to just throw your money away. I'm sure the Runway folks won't mind you throwing your money to them. But just for your own sanity, try to approach it with a little bit of, I have an idea here that I want to see if it works.
Cool. If there are no more questions, I'll keep going. Feel free to chime in if there are any questions at any moment. So yeah, this is an Instagram page of a cute cat named Bone Bone. I kind of cannibalized these slides from one of Derek's previous classes. But yeah, after scraping from Instagram, you might have about 2,000 images. And then you'll need to remove all the images that are too small. Here we're specifying a minimum size of 1024. But like Derek mentioned, if you want to make a smaller image, you can put in 512 or whatever for here. So in this case, we started out with about 2,000, and after throwing out images that were too small, we only have about 1,000, or we've kind of halved and thrown out about half of our data set from the get-go. So it's important to have like a little buffer in terms of the amount of images that you scrape down. The second thing you'll need to do is remove duplicates. Sometimes there might be exact duplicates when you scrape from Instagram. This is the command from the Dataset Tools library to remove exact copies of images. And here we've taken out, there are probably two, it goes from 130 to 128. So there are like 2 or 3 exact duplicates. Third, you'll want to hand curate. There might be some images that are, these images here are not exact duplicates, but they are definitely very, very similar and lack little diversity for your data set. So you might want to go through and take stuff like this out. This will not be taken out automatically by the Dataset Tools library since they are not exactly the same image, but you might want to take them out. And you also might want to take out like images that you don't think will fit in with things you want to generate or will fit in with the rest of your data set. Like maybe it's Bonebone's paw or all of these people, or maybe Bonebone's face is occluded by a mustache and you don't want to generate that. And then the last thing that you'll do is if you want to crop to center and see how your images are before feeding them into the Runway model, this is the command to crop to square. This will default to a center crop. So like these top parts of the images will be cut off. So maybe for this last image, like a center crop would not be good, in which case I can specify that I want this v-align top parameter to crop along the top. And yeah, and then your data set should be ready to feed into Runway.
Wow, we actually have a class that finished on time. Amazing. So I know everyone's gonna have a lot of questions about like my particular data set or what do we do. So if you are interested in that, we can definitely talk about that. I'm just gonna share really quickly because in case people need to leave right on time, let me just sort of show what the homework is gonna be. I think it's pretty clear. Most of you are gonna spend your time, okay, Bug, yeah. Most of you are gonna spend your time, wow, okay, let's start all the way there. Most of you are going to spend your time working on data sets. So I would say like for a lot of you, like start to think about where your data set might come from. Leah and I are always happy to help with this sort of thing. So if you have questions around, you know, I want to make a data set of this, where should I go and find it? We always have recommendations and we can always help out like finding some stuff too. So you can make your own, you can scrape your own, you can find a pre-made one on the internet. If for whatever reason you don't want to build your own data set or you run out of time or whatever, let Leah or I know, and we have a bunch of pre-made data sets. We can just give you one. There's also some, I think, inside of Runway. So if you want to like use one of their pre-made data sets, like they have one around galaxies, they have one on landscapes, some other things. So if you are interested in just like learning how training works, you can just use one of the pre-made ones or we can give you one. Yeah, so next class we will be covering training in Runway. So we'll talk a little bit about how it works, what to look for, and then we'll talk a little bit about once your model's finished training, what you can do with it directly in Runway. And then the last week of class, we will talk about how to like mess with it using some external tools. The other assignment is to just like never stop playing with Runway models. So there's been a couple new additions that I've seen already this week. So there's probably more models in there to play with. Maybe you want to play with some chaining stuff and understand how that works. Lots of cool things that you could do. So that's pretty much it for this week. So if you need to take off, feel free. Otherwise, we are going to just do a lot of Q&A around like how we could build or generate some data sets. And if you have questions about anything else within Runway as well. Yeah. So thanks everybody for a good week, and we'll stick around for doing a Q&A.
April just asked if you actually trained the set on the bone pictures, or
No, but
actually
I
trained a
have them.
model.
No, but I have them. Maybe this is the week that we actually train Bone.
Do you know how I can specify like adding a model to like a specific workspace? It just keeps defaulting to like.
Oh, yes, yeah.
workspace.
So let me share my screen and I can show you how to do that. It is not my favorite thing that they like made it a little bit harder. So in Runway, when you go over to models, let's just pick a random model here. We'll pick the tattoo StyleGAN. So the thing to do is to click on the, instead of clicking on just anywhere, click on the Learn More section. It's like not clear that that's its own section, but if you click on Learn More, at the top here you'll see Add to Workspace. And if you click on this, you will have the option of adding it to a particular workspace or adding it to a new workspace. Yeah, I wish that they made that a little bit cleaner or a little bit easier to do. But that's how you do it.
Thank you.
Yep.
So as someone who's not too familiar or doesn't have a lot of experience in command line stuff, do you feel confident that I could go through the Instagram tutorial and the tools as well?
I do. And also like part of the reason that this class exists is so that I can help you with that. So
okay.
I'm happy to like, so there are some videos already on my YouTube channel that sort of go over like how to install certain things. So the first thing I recommend everyone do is install Anaconda, which is that the video that's linked to in Leah's deck is like, I recommend installing that because that will save you a huge time, especially if you're using a Mac. If you use a Mac, Mac ships with like a number of different versions of Python and it will like cause you the world's biggest headaches just to get everything installed. So installing Anaconda like sets you up with an environment to install stuff and then things will work from there.
Okay.
So yeah, if you're not familiar with the command line, you can mostly just follow the steps that I've outlined in certain videos. And I'm always happy to help out if they're like, okay, I've got files here. I need to do this with it. How do I do that? I'm happy to help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I usually can follow steps from videos, so.
Cool. I mean, I'm also admit, like, if you can't, let me know because that probably means I just screwed up something in the video and I need to do it better or they explain it better. So yeah, I like feedback like that.
Or my kids are more familiar with YouTube videos, so maybe they can watch the video and then show me how to do it.
Cool. Putting the kids to work is a good idea too. I like that.
Would things be a little different on a Windows, or is it pretty much the same on Mac?
I still kind of have enough about Windows to know how its environments work, but I would just probably go through the same steps. It's mostly the same. Anaconda is a little different, but the actual steps into running the commands are pretty much the same. The thing you'll have to, maybe you know this already, but you have to find like a command line tool to use. Like I think PowerShell is the one they usually use for Windows. So you might just have to like find the right like command line tool to use.
What's it called again? Sorry.
PowerShell. If you just type in like Windows command line, there's probably a bunch of different apps you can use.
And then I had another question regarding adding models to your workspace. So the order you added in, you can't change it, right? You can't like drag and make, say like, I added 2 models and if I want to flip the order, like do I have to re-add it or it's like not really letting me kind of flip it?
I just tried just now and I can reorder them.
Oh,
I didn't even know that worked. So I could just like maybe that's because I'm on a Mac. I don't know. But I was able to click and drag. I think the other thing is if you have more than one model in here, you can also change. Let me see. It looks like you can't change any order of them. So basically you do have to reorder them. If you can't click and drag, let me know because that's something to just let the Runway folks know. Maybe they just don't know that it's broken in Windows or something.
Okay.
I had a question. So I downloaded a bunch of these images that were of varying, like they were the same thing but of varying resolutions. And when I put them into train into Runway, I had to kind of crop them. Like they have a new feature where you can actually crop it in the Runway program. But I wasn't sure because some of them I zoomed in a lot, some of them I cropped in a lot. I wasn't sure if like the varying resolutions made I don't know if I'm asking it correctly, if that makes an issue in the model.
I've actually never
Like,
tried that
do
before,
they
but almost
scale
yeah.
them down or scale them up, or how does?
They'll scale them all to the exact same size. So if you have cropped them at different sizes, you should probably resize them yourself to make sure that they don't resize to all the same size, if that makes sense.
You mean before putting them into Runway?
Before putting them in Runway, because Runway will do some auto resizing itself, and you just want to make sure it's like not like basically what I would do is I would resize them all to 1024 square just to make sure that they're not being resized in different ways that I don't expect. That's kind of why, as much as I like the Runway tools, it can lead to some unexpected stuff like that if you aren't really thinking very like super logically about what you're doing. So I try to like do it manually so that I know what's happening, and then when I upload it, it's like I know what it's doing from there. Yeah.
Kind of a convoluted question. I'm not sure what the best way to go about. If for example, I need my outputs to always be in like landscape mode, and rather than square, and it's important that it always be formatted that way. Should I add like a white band on each image? Like
so there's a couple options here. So you can either add. So there is inside the Datasets tool library, there is a way to add borders. If that's not in a video, let me know and I can add it. The other option is you can actually mirror the edges. And what might happen with that is then it like learns more of the representations of the model. I think that might work better, but like don't hold me to that. But that's another option you can do within the Dataset tools library. And it's just like you change the border type and I think you say it to reflect, and it just reflects those edges. And then what you would do is you would still train it on that. And then you would still just crop it down to the size you want at the output.
Gotcha. So for example, if I was like, this is my image or something, and it'd say mirror, so it'd be this, it would like
mirror, like flips the corners. Yeah, it flips. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's either in Datasets, it'd be called adding borders.
It's called, so in the Dataset tool library, there's a thing called border type.
Okay.
And you set border type to reflect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
And I know some folks in here were interested in maybe using video. And I don't know if you're interested in using video as a data set or not, but so actually the StyleGAN class I'm teaching is also very interested in video. So I'm recording a video this week on how to take a video and how to split it into frames using a thing called FFmpeg. So if you are interested in that, just let me know and I can make sure that you see the video as well. Basically, you have to install FFmpeg, which is like a download that you have to install. Once you've done that, then there's a little command line thing you can run to split things up into frames. What other questions do folks have? Moises, go ahead.
As far as style transfer, I think earlier in the week I had, like 2 weeks back ago, just if you do style transfer between frames, like how to get that smoother. And I think you mentioned something about optical flow, but in terms of thinking through that,
so you can't really do that in Runway. I have a collab that I have a video that actually, I'm gonna put a note here. I save all these notes, all get saved to me. So I'm just gonna have a note about style transfer video. You kind of have to do it on its own thing because it's really, really computationally intensive. But I will make sure that happens, or I'll send you that link to that video. But yeah, you can't really do that inside of Runway.
Question. What would happen if I had a bunch of character concepts and all of them were exact, where one is looking straight on, the other one is looking in, like, let's say right, and I just had literally 500 versions of this, and I had managed to clean up all of it so they all had white backgrounds. What would actually result?
So if possible, I would separate those out into a different model for each view. Because if you don't, it ends up just kind of like mashing them up, which is cool too, but like it is different. Basically, there's no idea of what we call in machine learning, what we call classes, which is like you would classify this is the front view and this is the right view. StyleGAN has no concept of that. It's just going to try to say like, you gave me a bunch of different images and I'm going to try to make the best representation of those images I can. So it'll kind of mash up stuff. Now what'll probably happen is it'll actually learn front and right, and it'll kind of also have a mashed up view. So like when you do your latent interpolation, it'll kind of like do this weird like shifting thing.
Undulating.
Yeah, it'll kind of be like undulating, and like it'll be weird, but it's like kind of cool. But again, I would just say like try stuff and see what happens. You know, you never know what's going to happen when you actually like put it in a model and see what happens. I'm
So
constantly like surprised.
If you actually did keep it all uniform, let's say it's all front facing, like what would it just be like morphing between all the different shapes and sizes?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily morph between all the shapes and sizes. It learns certain features. So it might actually take like color features and be able to apply coloration to a pre-existing shape. Or it like learns, you know, oh, this person has headgear, so headgear is a thing that exists on other models too. Yeah, it's kind of tricky to describe in the sense that it's like, it's not just like probability, but it's probability of individual features and other things. And then it has a way that you can sort of mash all those things together. It's like very unique in that it's like, I am almost never sure of what I'm actually going to get when I get it at the end. Sometimes I get stuff that looks just like exactly like what I had seen already, and I feel kind of like it was kind of a waste. And sometimes I get stuff that am totally surprised by. It's like just a very unique experience.
I have a workflow question.
Mm-hmm.
So for data, all the data that you're collecting, you're gonna have all these thousands of frames. They're all named just like gibberish and whatever. Is there a suite of tools in your cleanup to basically name them all and then put them in different folders? And do you have any sort of idea of like, oh, I like this data set. This is really good smiles, and this is really good, you know, gray cats, and this is really whatever. And they're all like kind of folder structures. And do you keep them locally, or do you use like Dropbox? Like what's good data management, I guess, is the overall question.
Yeah, so specific to StyleGAN, StyleGAN doesn't care at all about like file names or anything. So when you feed it a data set, you just like, it just looks at all those images as a unique representation. Now for your own management, I am the sloppiest file manager in the world. So I would say you should definitely not take my recommendation. In terms of what you're asking about is classifying, there are some tools where you could like, I'm trying to think about like what some of them are.
I mean, is there just a Python script that just names it all with a number on it? I mean, probably just like a for loop that goes through the whole thing.
Yeah, so you can if you want them all numbered, there is a command inside of Dataset tools that just numbers them all in the order it gets them. Now the problem is that the order it gets them in is a random shuffle. So if you have it already in a structure, it's not going to keep that structure when it brings them in. That's a little annoying and tricky. Are you on a Mac or on Windows?
I'm on Windows.
Okay. I know Mac has like a rename option, but I don't know if Windows has anything like that. Where you're going to sort of like name stuff with like a prefix or whatever. There are probably tools like that. I, again, don't spend my time doing that sort of work. So I think the other thing you were asking, which is like, could I maybe give a bunch of images to like something and have it structure them into like, these are all the smiles or these are all the other things. There are some APIs, I think like, I know Google has an API like that, and I think some other places have an API like that, where you could actually, it will try to classify the images for you. And I want to say like Microsoft has one of those. The problem is that many of them charge for it. So, or like under a certain number of images, it'll do it for free, and then other things it costs more than that. But there are some options for that. So if you like just download a ton of images and want to sort them, there are some tools that do that. My library doesn't do that for you, but there probably are some other tools, which I can probably get you the names of. I know that there's some people in the Slack channel definitely know what those are.
When you're chaining models, you can't chain vector models to vector models, right? It has to be like the example you showed was text to image to text, but you know, you can't, like, I was trying out the architecture one, the brutal architecture something, and then I tried to chain it with a different vector one, but then, you know, is there like a way around it?
Well, yeah, so you have to think about what the output of the previous model is to your input of your next model, right? So in the way that I did it, it is a text to image. So it converts text to image. So that's the output is an image. Then the next model is the input is an image and the output is an image. And then the last model, the input is an image and the output is text. So they have to make sure that it's like Legos. They have to match up the right way. So that's where vector becomes a problem, because there's no model in Runway that its output is a vector. But that would be a cool model in itself. Like someone should make that model just so you could begin to plug and play these things. Like you could take text, convert text to a vector, and then use that to conditionally use that as a vector for the image. Like that's a potential way to work. So like we could actually do that like almost using P5.js. Like there are models that will take text in and give you coordinates for those text in a space, and then you could actually find the image in that space as well. So there are ways to do things like that that are pretty interesting. You will have to do some massaging of like how the inputs actually work. But yeah, like those are, so again, the input has to match or the output has to match the input in order for it to work right. Otherwise it won't ever work. So you have to know a little bit more about how the model works to be able to do that stuff. Any other questions? Anything you want me to demo for you?
I guess suggestions with beautiful soup in general, like if like I have a few data sets where I know where the images are coming from, but sometimes the URL is not easy to get to unless you're like in the HTML and it's like some background image and all this stuff. And like there might not be pagination between the pages. I like the data sets and they're consistent in size and all these things. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can talk later about it, but
yeah, I mean, I'll just tell you, like, some of that stuff is just like, that's the painfulness of this work. There have been days where I can't do that sort of thing myself. And one recommendation I have is it's a good weekend project. You sit in front of your laptop and you watch TV and you're half focusing on both, and you just like, you are the machine. You just click, download, click, download, click, download. I have done that before. It is like, here's the thing. No one else is going to do that work. So that is your personal data set. No one else will do that work. So actually a lot of my data sets, if you're like, ooh, that's really unique. How do I get that? And I'm like, go do some manual labor. Like that is, it's an unfortunate part of this work sometimes, is just to do that.
Probably pay somebody on Fiverr to do it.
Yeah. The problem with that is like, you don't know if that person knows what they're doing either.
Right. I'm joking.
No, but you could. I mean, that's what people used to do Mechanical Turk for, right? Like people would be like, go do this task for me. And then I get stuff, and like, you know, I don't know if people really use Mechanical Turk these days, but it's a possibility to do stuff like that.
Oh, I think we might have talked about this, about like fair use. Like if I script a bunch of stuff off Flickr, use it to train a thing, but like some of them are free for whatever use and some are like not letting you use. Is that something I should worry about?
I mean, this is like, this gets into
hypothetically,
ethics, which is like,
yeah.
I'm not a legal scholar and I cannot tell you how you should approach it.
Yeah.
My feeling is that if you are, creative license, or like creating something new from this data set that is different, that is kind of yours, like from a legal perspective, it is supposedly yours.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that someone with a high-priced lawyer can't still sue you, unfortunately.
If they found out.
If they found out, right? Exactly.
Hypothetically,
so like,
okay.
Yeah, hypothetically in all these worlds. So if you use the Flickr scraper tool, which I have a video for, if you use that only scrapes Creative Commons images.
Oh, okay.
So like that's kind of nice in that it like, the way they built their API is you can't get access to people's images who they don't want you to use them.
Okay.
Now that can also be annoying because you might know there's like a really good number of images available in Flickr, but you can't get them through the API. So you have to do like manual labor to like download them. So, you know, yes, that is also a potential possibility of things. I would say, you know, use your best judgment. If it's 3 images in a 1,000 image data set, no one's gonna notice. If it's someone's entire life's work, maybe ask some permission beforehand. Like, so this is especially a thing with Instagram, right? Like with the Instagram scraper, I could literally scrape someone's entire Instagram folder and like just use their images. And that's kind of problematic. Like definitely like someone might be offended if you did that. So just be aware of those sort of concerns. I mean, what I like to do with Instagram and with Flickr is like, actually just combine a couple different queries to get a data set that is, a mix of things. So in the Leah's case, I might find like other ocean life images maybe there's like a hashtag, or there's another couple accounts that also do ocean life imagery that I might grab from, and I might just combine those together. That's just a nice way to sort of explore like creating some more creative mashup type of stuff.
How much deeper are you going to get into like latent space stuff in this class is my question.
We'll talk about it more next week for sure, or not next week, but the week after for sure. Basically, latent spaces are kind of they're definitely a deep topic. Like we can get pretty deep into like how they work. In general, I find, if you understand that that these are vectors and we're in space, and you give them a coordinate and that is a image in space, you can kind of understand a lot of stuff. And then it's just like, how creative can you get, or like, how can you code a thing to find that point?
Is it all sort of a 2D XY kind of like thinking, everything's being mapped to that, or how are they thinking about these multi-dimensional things?
Yeah, I mean, there are very big math nerds who are thinking a lot about this stuff. It is it's also like just a tough concept because our brains don't think in those spaces. So I would say like a lot of what we're all just sort of scratching the surface on how to explore these things. So a lot of what I will do is I'll just start with one image that I like and find another image I like and interpolate between those, like keyframing almost. There's lots of different ways you can explore these things, and we're just sort of scratching the surface. And I'll just show you how to start to do that in this class. If you're interested, I am also doing a StyleGAN class right now that is all about StyleGAN. And we go a lot deeper into that. We talk about like the actual spaces and how to maneuver those things. You can take that class if you want to ask me questions, but I also I do record the videos, and they will go up on YouTube once the class is over. So if you're interested in just sort of like seeing whether it's something you want to investigate more, you can also check those out.
Cool.
Is that also via Runway, or is it a separate?
No, so we actually do it's all command line servers. So that class is, I teach basically I teach behind the scenes what's happening on Runway, but we can do it all directly. We sign up for crazy expensive GPU servers. We do code to set up everything. And then we actually we'll do more coding to investigate how to explore latent spaces. So that is that is the most advanced version of my classes. So basically the way that my classes are working right now is Runway is the basics class, because we sort of get to explore lots of models. I have another intermediate class that is more about sort of starting to investigate training and seeing training on a couple different models. And I have a StyleGAN class that's the deep dive, let's get super nerdy with this stuff. I think that's what I'm gonna continue doing. We'll sort of see. All of the intermediate classes, if you're interested, those intermediate classes are all on YouTube today. I've been teaching that for since July of last year. There's 4 or 5 sessions all online. So if you're interested in anything about those topics, I'll gladly send you some links to those. I generally, anytime I record classes, they all go up on YouTube once the class is over. So you're always welcome to dig into those and try to explore them. They're kind of just thrown at you. So they aren't structured in the way this class is, or you may have to sort of reverse engineer how the structuring works. But they're sort of there to give people lots of different content if they're interested. And then if you want to take a class, I announce all the classes through my newsletter and through Twitter and other stuff. So if you're interested in taking another class, those are all available to you. And I just sort of announce them as come. And then Leah and I are usually teaching them together in different ways. So yeah.
Cool.
So Moises, by the way, is in both this class and in the StyleGAN class. So he's probably got lots of homework.
So since we're doing all this, I guess, data set gathering, if we wanted to do a StyleGAN kind of thing, or pix to pix, which is something that I'm interested in, is that something that is remotely doable, in this beginner level?
Yeah. So it's not doable inside a Runway. I do have videos on how to train both pix to pix and StyleGAN using a GPU server. So if you are interested, I'm happy to set you up with those videos. Basically what you need is you need to be able to rent a GPU or have your own. And be able to like download and install some software, and then you can run those trainings on those machines. So yeah, I'll make a note to send you some of the materials for that.
And like how many, like for example, for our StyleGAN stuff, we normally need at least 500 images, but in a situation where it's like one for one, like it's like here's, I think StyleGAN is the A folder, B folder kind of situation, right? Like how many, what's the data set for ideally for that? Is that also?
Yeah, usually it's a little bit smaller. You can usually get away with like 250 to 500 images. Again, I have resources so that's like, I cover Pix2Pix and StyleGAN and do more in-depth style transfer stuff in my intermediate class. So I'll just send you the videos from those, and you're welcome to just take a look. And if you have other questions, I'm happy to answer stuff. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned before if you didn't have 500 images, there's a way to like fake it potentially.
Yeah, it gets pretty gnarly pretty quickly. There's some techniques that people have suggested, which is basically like, let's say you have a 1500 by 1500 square image. If you take different 1024 by 1024 sections of that image, you can essentially augment your data set to be a little bit larger. Now, the problem is that that doesn't really augment your data set that much better, but it does give the model a little bit new data, right? So it's saying like, let's say I've got a big picture of a dog and I say like, sometimes the dog face can be down in the left-hand corner. Sometimes the dog face can be in the upper right-hand corner. It's still like the face itself is still pretty similar. So that's a way to stretch it a little bit, but you really don't want to stretch that. Like you don't want to take 20 images and stretch it to 100. You want to take like 400 images and stretch it to 500, or 400 images and stretch it to 800. You really want to try to get close to that 500 threshold. Because anything less and you get a thing, we'll talk about this a little bit more next week, but you could get a thing called overfitting, which all it does is repeat the images back to you. And that like is a waste of your money and time.
Cool. So, and then the one last question I had. So I think earlier I was mentioning, like I saw one of your videos where you had two models that were like combined into maybe a third model or something.
Yeah.
Can you get similar results if you were to have both of the data sets mixed and then you train one model with like a mixture, or will that be like completely different?
It's completely different. Yeah, it's completely different. You'll get like a very messy sort of middle mushy kind of image in StyleGAN. What you can do, and Runway does support this, is you train one model at first, and then you train a second model on the second data set for a very short period of time. And what happens is during that very short period of time, it like takes the old data that it's learned and it slowly transitions it to the new data. And that point right in the middle is what this mixed model is. That's all how that works. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what you end up doing is you end up training, like let's say you train your first model for 7,500 steps, and then you train the next model for 500 steps or 1,000 steps. And you get this like very nice, like sort of like middle ground where it's still sort of transferring its learning over to a new area. All right, unless people have more questions, go for it, Moises, yeah. You're muted still. If you can't find it, you want to ask your question in Slack or in the chat, and I can repeat it here.
Hello?
Yep, I got you now.
Okay, yeah, so I just wanted to mention what I did in the previous class, but I'm kind of been working a lot in live streaming because the museum is closed down. And so we're trying to find a way to do live events in live streaming. So I kind of have a setup going where either from Zoom or from a second computer, I start streaming to whatever, YouTube, Facebook. So if we do want to coordinate some kind of presentation at the end that involves a showcase of some kind, it can be to Instagram too. So right now I have me with some like ASCII going, and it doesn't have to be as dynamic, let's say, but yeah, I'm happy to coordinate some kind of final output presentation.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Leah and I are also really excited about like people sharing their work. So if we want to do something like actually have a show and tell where we'll actually like share this with a larger group, we're happy to do that. Leah and I are also trying to coordinate like sort of capturing some work, whether that be on a web page or videos or other things. So if you're interested in producing some stuff for that, I think people would love to see it. I know especially the Runway folks would love to see what people are making out of these classes. If anything, it helps them know where they should be making more tools and more things available to people. So like definitely like please share your work far and wide, and you can always tag me and Leah in whatever social media stuff you're working on, and we're happy to like reshare it. And if you do decide to like write up some stuff, like please let us know, because I personally love sharing that stuff as well. Like I think I've said this before in this class, but like even in using other people's models inside of Runway, like there's still like so much uncharted territory in this work that just being in this class and just like thinking about these things and exploring some stuff means you are doing work that like no one else has done in the entire earth. So like just working on this stuff is really cool. And lots of people will be more than interested in what you're making. So please feel free to like share stuff freely and as widely as you can. And if you do share stuff in Slack, sometimes I might ask like, hey, is it cool if I share this with like other folks or like put it on social media? So if you do have social accounts and you want me to tag you in stuff, like please let me know. Like when Nye did his like very quick like little demo of how you know how certain pose models worked, I made sure to like mention that, and I think I saw some of the Runway folks were pretty excited about that too. Yeah, so like even though this is the beginner class, you're still doing lots of stuff that like no one has done before, so it's pretty cool.
I did have a question. Again, this is more on like potential projects in the future, but so at where I work, we have like a whole imaging department. Like we have photos that have been retouched that are like 7 gigabytes large. So I'm just curious, from what I understand of how like the upresing works, could I, in theory, basically train my own that is specific to my company, in which it's like, because like we have like tons of hardware shots where it's like, oh, it'd be kind of cool since I have this enormous amount, like repository of like high resolution assets, that it's like, oh, someone could take a photo with their phone and we could actually generate something that's like halfway decent.
Yeah, so that's actually that is really how your camera phone works. So the way Apple and other like phone devices have worked is that they have produced machine learning models. So when you take a photo in low light, what it actually does is it runs it through a machine learning model to actually produce the best possible image out of that low light image. It's both photo sensors, but also just a machine learning model. So the way that works is they basically take a very good photograph in like in an environment they control the lighting, then they turn the lighting down, and then you usually have two maps, like a really great photo that's well lit, and then a poorly lit photo of the exact same scene. So that is basically like what machine learning in production at hardware companies looks like. So that's definitely a thing you could do. Writing your own architecture to do those things is where it becomes very crazy. But someone could do it out there, not even me. But that's like what a lot of machine learning engineers do. Like that is their day-to-day work, is to like produce architectures to build those sort of things for these different companies. And likewise for your company, it's like, yes, someone could potentially shoot a very poorly or a pseudo okay shot photo of whatever it is in space, and then it could in the future, I think it's like we're not there yet, but in the future it could be like much better.
I guess what I was thinking about, which is far more rudimentary, and I guess this is essentially where I would just batch down res everything.
Yep.
And then basically teach it. It's like, hey, you see this shitty photo? Like, this is what that looks like. It's supposed to look like. And then I just give it like 1,000 version of that.
Yeah. So in my experience, the super resolution models that already exist do a 99% similar job. So it might just make more sense to just use those models. There's actually a company called Topaz Labs, and they have a machine learning model called Gigapixel AI, and it's really like a little Photoshop script that like upreses your images. They have worked with some really great like professional photographers. So to back up a little bit, the problem with most data science models that we will play with in like Runway are that they were made by some like scientists sitting somewhere that like didn't have access to a good data set. So they like rough it. Then there's companies like Topaz who like understand how that model works, go out and hire good photographers to take really high res photos, and then they do the downsampling and then they do it. So like in the case of those companies, it's probably just worth you to spend the $75 for their app and do the work that way, or to like figure it out, than it is to like train your own model. And this is sort of like, this gets into my intermediate class, which is like, think about what you're training. If you're trying to train something that someone else has already done, you might just be better off using their model. Whereas if you have a very unique case, like I think you were talking about before, like you have an artist, you have a friend who's like an artist that does penciling, and they do color it, like someone else colors it. That's an interesting use case where it might be more unique to their art, or it might be just more like stylistic, like those sort of things. So that gets into like nuances of like, if something else already exists that gets you 99% of the way there, just use that. Versus like, I have my own custom idea and I want to do it, just because sometimes it never works the way you expect it to, has been my experience. Yeah.
I guess there's also a lot of stuff that we do because a lot of our retouchers or imagers are from Apple. So like there's like regular retouchers and there's like Apple tier, right?
Yeah.
And like I have tons of examples of like unadulterated like the photo itself and then the retouched version, like in theory.
Yep.
Like I'd be curious to know what would happen. Like I don't actually know.
Yeah,
Because
no,
they
totally.
retouch
Exactly,
the crap out of the hands. Hands don't look like that. Like in any, like if you go through like the Apple website and you like see their hands, they're like beautifully manicured and their skin is so even.
Yeah. So the limitations you run into for that, I don't know if I will nerd out and talk about this all the time because I think this is really fascinating. The limitation you run into there is resolution. So a lot of these pix-to-pix models where they are mapping stuff one-to-one, they max out at like 1024.
I see.
So like, yes, you get close, but like it'll still never be that 7K version that you have. And that's where the challenge comes into, is like, to do something larger than 1024 by 1024, you need like a $10,000 graphics card. And even then that gets you to 2048. Doesn't get you to 7K. So it's like, this is the limit that we're running into right now with machine learning, is that like, you know, in 5 years we'll be fine, we'll get there, but like today it's hard. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Who else wants to talk about graphics cards? I can talk about graphics cards.
Is it worth trying to get a non-Linux desktop setup for running local models and things like that, or is Linux still the best solution? As somebody who
Linux is yeah. Linux is the only way to go. More and more people are getting Windows to work, but it's really tough. Basically, NVIDIA, and also you can only work with NVIDIA cards right now. So you need an NVIDIA card on Linux to get all the software installed that you need. Yeah.
Yeah, I took some time to try to get Docker running with Runway, and then I was like, oh, but it's only CPU, at least on a Mac, so it's like pointless almost. So back to the Linux box.
Yeah. Yes, I recently invested in my own Linux box, and it was annoying, but it's like it's much better. So basically, like this is again like for the folks that are interested, like I have been doing training models and doing this work for basically 24/7 since about July. And finally I ran the costs to do this, either not even necessarily in Runway, but just like renting GPUs. It just finally made sense to build my own. For most of you, it does not make sense to build your own. You can rent Linux servers from like a place, like there's a place called vast.ai. You can rent other people's Linux servers for fractions of the cost to buy your own. But eventually the annoyances of those tools like sort of like end up just not being worth it, and you decide I'm just going to invest and build my own. And yeah, so there's lots of cool things there, but that's like a whole other class on like how to set up a GPU rig.
What are
if you work in
sorry, go ahead. What are things that you're currently running right now, out of curiosity?
I'm running 3 or 4 of my own StyleGAN models right now. And so basically the way I run a StyleGAN model is very slow. It runs on 1 or 2 GPUs. So it takes a week to train as far as it would on Runway in a couple hours. But when you do the cost analysis, it ends up saving me some money. Also, like for me personally, like I'm doing a lot of other work. I have a 9 to 5 while I'm doing this stuff. So like that taking forever is fine by me. It's like, it doesn't necessarily bother me. But yeah, I'm running I do a lot of StyleGAN models, just in part because I'm teaching classes on it right now. So I'm like, part of my job is to like stay ahead of the curve. And the thing that's cool about StyleGAN in particular is that there's a huge community around it. And by huge, I mean, there's 50 people. There are 50 people who are like digging in deep into how the model works and like finding new forks and ways to make some really cool additional features to it. So Runway like teaches has the most basic StyleGAN version on it. I have models that can run non-square images. I have models that add different layers and different techniques within it. So there's lots of cool stuff to be done. That is all in my advanced StyleGAN class. If you're interested, those videos will be out in a couple weeks. But yeah, there's like, when you get deep into this stuff, there's like lots of ways to nerd out and like spend months of your time doing things.
When you're referring to StyleGAN, are you referring to StyleGAN 1 or 2?
2 at this point. Everyone sort of, I know, has sort of stopped using StyleGAN 1, just because 2 is dramatically better. And 2 is what comes in Runway now. So you'll get StyleGAN 2.
Because you get the option of 1 or 2. And I think like I was watching some videos, and it's like StyleGAN 2 is better, like just hands down better, but theoretically takes a little bit more time.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore slightly more expensive, which is why I trained my last thing on StyleGAN 1.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I didn't even know they had an option in there. I guess I haven't seen that yet. Guess I should learn that before class next week. But yeah, that's basically the answer. I would still say in most cases, just use StyleGAN 2. Because I just find there's a lot of artifacts in StyleGAN 1 that are not nice, essentially. Cool, so I owe some people some videos and some links. Please hit me or Leah up if you're interested in more dataset stuff. I'm happy to, so in general, what I try to do is if 2 people in a class ask me a question that is similar, I try to record a video so that if basically everyone can have that access to that afterward. But if you do have some unique instances of something that you're uniquely trying to solve, I'm happy to like work one-on-one with you, or just hit up Leah. Like Leah and I are sort of like splitting up duties. So you're welcome to ask both of us in a DM, or, ask her directly or me directly. And we both sort of tag team helping people where needed. Cool. All right. Well, I'll see everyone on Slack over the next week, and then I'll see y'all next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.